This is going to be a rather big update. I'll cover the upcoming Canon EOS R5 and R6 firmware update, an update on the R5 overheating, and the R5 and R6 pre-sales performance. Let's get into it. Hi, I'm Simon. Welcome to The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're new here, subscribe to get notification of new videos like this one so you don't miss any news. And all the links to everything I talk about in this video, including any gear discussed, are placed in the description down below. But before I get into today's topic, just a reminder that I'm still giving away this Canon EF 50mm f1.8 lens. The contest ends July 31st. Subscribe to my channel for your chance to win. That's it. See contest details in the description down below. Also, you'll notice that I've added chapters to the beginning of this video, so if you look at the timeline there, you can jump to whichever part of the video you'd like to. All right, now let's get back to the regular video as scheduled. Now, it shouldn't be a surprise that Canon is working hard on a firmware update to the R5, being that it's still in the pre-production phase. Canon Japan put up a short note on their EOS R5 presentation page with the following, which, bit of a disclaimer here, has been machine translated from Japanese, so the accuracy may not be 100%. Thanks to Canon Watch for finding this out. We're going to be getting 120 frames per second in 1080, and we'll also have low bit rate added to RAW and IPB for all resolutions and frame rates. And that's kind of interesting there alone. We'll also be getting Canon Log 3. It's nice to be able to get 120 frames per second in 1080, but it's not as though the capability wasn't there. By recording 120 frames per second in 4K, we can downsample to 1080p, so the capability is there. The advantage is that there's going to be less heat and processing resources required when shooting in 1080. The notice indicates that we will be getting RAW in all resolutions and frame rates. I'm kind of surprised by this one. I wonder if there was a problem with the translation. RAW recording in 1080 and 4K would be the first in a hybrid camera and give filmmakers complete control over the quality and color precision. Kind of steps on the C1 or C100 and C300, doesn't it? Now, I don't want to get too excited over this one. Now, if you do happen to speak and read Japanese, could you shed some light on the translation from the Canon Japan's presentation page on the R5 in the comments section down below? C-Log 3 or Canon Log 3 offers greater dynamic range in 10-bit. However, there's no mention yet if the R5 or R6 allows us to apply Rec 709 or 2020 in camera. Now, this is really helpful to many of us, as it's quite tricky to be able to determine the brightness and exposure with a flat profile without being able to apply that rec in camera. So yay, we get C-Log 3, but without being able to apply that rec, that is something that makes it a little bit more tricky. There's no mention whatsoever about any update relating the overheating concern. This has been kind of, well, it's gotten a lot of press since the R5 announcement. There's no mention if the firmware update could address any overheating concerns whatsoever. Over at Canon Rumors, Craig tells us that the R6 will be getting All I in a firmware update, and this comes along with Canon Log 3 or C-Log 3. Now this gives the choice back to the content creator where it should be. If you want everything to be picture perfect, well, All I is the only way to go. Now IPB can get confused and add detail to a frame where detail does not exist or even remove it. Not an issue for most ordinary filmmakers, but a definite problem for some. At least the control comes back to us. We can choose which one we prefer. Now, does this change your mind on whether to get the R5 over the R6? Let me know in the comments section down below. Now, we don't have a timeline when the update's going to be pushed. As the R5 is still in production or pre-production, I'd expect the R5 to come with a firmware update already applied by the time we get it at the end of the month. But as with any technology, check for updates as soon as you get your product, as soon as you get your camera. It's not uncommon for firmware updates to be applied up to the last minute, even after a product has shipped. On the weekend, I published a piece about the R5 overheating in some video modes. I've been able to clarify which modes overheat, for how long, and which video modes offer the best reliability. Here's a quick reference slide of the modes I'll be covering. 8K RAW full sensor readout, 4K HQ, that's full sensor readout, 4K 30 full sensor but with pixel binning, 4K 60 and 120 frames per second, full sensor with pixel binning, and of course 1080 or full HD. Now each mode listed supports 10-bit and comes with Canon Log 1, though this will change in a firmware update as I just discussed in the previous chapter, giving us Canon Log 3. The first mode creates the most amount of heat and is the most susceptible to overheating, but gives us gives us so much detail, gives us 8K for the first time in a hybrid camera. Now, being out in the sun on a hot day will further reduce that time. In normal operating temperatures, which is around 73 degrees Fahrenheit or around 21, 22 degrees Celsius, we can expect to get about 20 minutes of 8K raw record time before the camera goes into its mandatory cool down period. Now, the R5 was never meant to be a full-time 8K camera. It's meant to deliver small scenes or clips. After 20 minutes of cool down, the R5 can shoot for another 8 minutes. Now, there's no mention how long we need to wait before we get the full 20 minutes back. Do we have to put it in a fridge or something? Yeah, we might have to put it in a fridge. 4K HQ or 4K Fine appeals to me the most. This is the mode with the highest amount of detail that you can get. The highest amount of detail that you can get on any hybrid camera, as it's downsampled from 8K full sensor width without any binning or any cropping. Now, we get 30 minutes of record time in 4K HQ. Now, there's no mention of what the cooldown period is, but I expect it to be in line with the 8K mode. 4K HQ, despite its limitations, is great for shooting small clips or small videos. For my channel, this mode will work for most videos with the exception of my long Q&A weekly segments. For my run and gun work, where I shoot small clips of up to a minute or two, this mode is perfect. And I'm always doing this with my son. I'm shooting him in, I might just shoot 20 seconds here or 10 seconds here, a minute here, 2 minutes here. And for this 4K HQ is perfect. It's very rare that I'll shoot more than 5 minutes at a time. And once I've shot for a couple of minutes, I'm usually done until the next opportunity arises. So 4K HQ is something I am very, very excited about. 30 minutes of record time, I'm pretty sure that's something I could work with. 4K 120 frames per second is a specialized mode, and few ordinary filmmakers, including myself, shoot at 120 frames per second for more than, well, maybe a minute or two at most. Now, 60 frames per second is not so specialized, although very few filmmakers are shooting at this speed. Many, including YouTubers, have their channels and they love to shoot at 1080 at 60 frames per second, which I imagine they'll love to try 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, if you need to shoot longer than 30 minutes at 60 frames per second in 4K, well, the R5 is not for you. It is also important to mention that both of these two video modes, 60 and 120 frames per second, use 2x2 pixel binning to achieve the image. Full sensor, 120 frames per second in 2x2 binning will produce incredible results. Results that we've yet to see on a Canon hybrid camera. The R5 also does 4K with full sensor with pixel binning. We're not getting 8K downsample video, but there's also no mention of any heat constraints with mandatory cooldowns. This mode includes the basic frame rates of 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, and is sufficient enough for most ordinary filmmakers where we need to shoot past the 30 or 60 minute mark. My weekly Q&A videos that I just mentioned usually generates a good 70 minutes of footage, even though the videos are usually compressed down to around 30 to 40 minutes. For my run and gun work, I'm definitely going to be using 4K HQ. I rarely get clips more than 2 minutes long, and I rarely shoot for more than 5 to 10 minutes at a time. And lastly, 1080. While most of my content is exported in 1080 and all my videos to date are, I won't be shooting in this mode. Using 4K footage produces much more detail, clarity, and color precision. If you can handle the larger files, shoot in 4K and downsample in post. 1080 supports the basic frame rates of 24, 25, and 30. However, 120 frames per second is not currently supported in the R5 or the R6 as yet. Or is it? Canon USA shows the R5 does have 120 frames per second on their web materials. This is not the first time something like this has happened. Do you remember back to last year? The Canon 90D had 24 frames per second and All I, and not in all modes, but it did have All I. And this was at 8 a.m. on the day of launch. Canon USA even confirmed so in a tweet. Then 30 minutes later, the story flipped. Either way, we are rumored to be getting 120 frames per second in 1080 in the R5 and R6 in a firmware update. Let's see if that pans out. After all, Canon has said if there is enough demand, they will give it to us. Canon USA stated, "We have received orders for the following products announced on July 9, 2020 that exceeded expectations and may take some time before the products are delivered. The products in question should not be a surprise to anyone, as they include the R5 and the R6 along with battery grips and both extenders. But is this really a big surprise? This is by far Canon's biggest push and commitment yet into the mirrorless market. Now, there is some hesitation. I've read many comments from many of you saying, I just want to wait and see the final reviews to know which camera to get. But for photographers, this is a huge update. Much improved autofocus with IBIS and a faster processor make getting blurry shots far less frequent with low light and subject movement. I'd still like to see some final reviews before making my decision, or do you think I should just go out and get the R5 and test it so you guys can see the results early? Tell me what you think in the comments section below. I've gotten an awful lot of really positive comments today. I got a lot of comments congratulating me on reaching 10,000 subscribers, which thank you very much. I do appreciate that. It feels very good to reach 10,000. I almost feel like I'm one of the, no, I'm not one of the pros, but I feel like I've just reached one step closer to that level, and it's very exciting for me. It's a sign of accomplishment. But I also received an awful lot of feedback, a lot of compliments on the new intro that I have. This is not something that I did myself. Really, all the credit goes to Bogdan for designing this, for taking the time over the course of a week to come up with a design, consulting you guys through various polls to come up with the logo that we have today. So Bogdan, thank you very much. And by the way, a lot of you have asked, how do I contact Bogdan if I would like to have something done myself? So here's Bogdan's contact information. You can reach him on Facebook or Instagram. I think he does prefer Instagram. I also conducted a poll today. I wanted to see what you guys really thought of it. I asked, do you like it the way it is? And an overwhelming 60% of you said, it's perfect the way it is. We don't need to change a thing at all. But almost 30% of you said, you know what, the music isn't quite you. I'd like to see that changed a little bit. And only 6 of you said, oh, I want to keep the voiceover from the previous intro. So at this point, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the voiceover is gone. It's not coming back. It's buried. It's deep. It's 6 feet under. It's not going anywhere. It's done. But in terms of music, well, what do you think? What would you like to see? Now, the problem I have is I'm not very good at composing music myself. I can recognize a good score, and all the stuff that I would take from what Top Gear or the Grand Tour has done, which is incredible stuff, is copy protected, and to get a license for that stuff, well, that would put me 6 feet under. And I've looked at some of the other streaming services and that you have to pay a certain amount a month or year, and those aren't for me either, because I believe my channel is better served without a sort of beat or hum or some other monotonous score behind what I say. I just don't see the need for that. So I'm at a loss. If you are part of the 30% that would like to see me change my music, why don't you come up with some suggestions? Send me some links to services that I can use, or if you're particularly adept at composing in GarageBand or whatever else is out there, it's only 5 seconds long. Give me your best shot, and I'd be more than happy to put it in the intro, and of course give you a little bit of behind the scenes to talk about what you've done. But I really am impressed with you guys. I've said you're the smartest audience out there on YouTube. Not only do you give me really, really great advice, but you've also taken time and effort of your own time to provide me with suggestions, and in Bogdan's case, design me a whole intro, and I was certainly not expecting that, so very much appreciated. So if you guys are looking for an intro or anything graphics related, graphic design, this is Bogdan's contact information. Give him a shout. But that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. I appreciate your time. If you'd like a chance to win this 50mm f1.8, go ahead and subscribe. And it's only about 2 more weeks before the draw is, and then I can stop mentioning this. I've learned a valuable lesson here. When I do draws, only do it for about 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm getting tired of mentioning it myself. I think I'm starting to dream it in my sleep. Anyhow, that's it for now. Thanks for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.